What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Monday. It is trade deadline week. Eric, the trade deadline is on Thursday, which means that our normal Thursday episode of Blazers Uprise Live will be pushed up to Wednesday. Just want to shout that out so that nobody is confused when we go live on Wednesday for Blazers Uprise Live. And then, oh yeah, Thursday's the trade deadline stream. So you better make it to that. Today, we have a normal episode in terms of picks against the spread, and then we'll start discussing some Blazer topics, but we will have Stephen Vaughn joining us to discuss who is making the front office decisions in Portland. They made the Clippers trade last week with Norman Powell and Robert Covington going to the LA Clippers. The Blazers get back Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and Eric Bledsoe, as well as a 2025 Detroit second-round pick. It was a very shady trade at the time, very fishy, and we'll get into maybe why that trade was fishy and some of the details into maybe how that went down. And then we'll discuss maybe what we want to see from the Blazers going forward as they push hard for the trade deadline. There's supposedly other moves on the horizon. Eric, what's going on, man? How's the start of your week going?
Not too bad. How about you, man?
It's going good, man. Just excited to kick things off with this episode. We got 5 games for picks against the spread, and I'm really looking forward to bringing up these standings, Eric, because I'm alone at number 1. I'm a game ahead of Jackson. Me, Jackson, and Chat, we all had really good days last Thursday for picks against the spread. Me and Chat, we went 6-1, Chat, so good job to all of you. Jackson, 5-2. Connor had a rough day, 2-5. Everybody else, 4-3, except for Trevin, 3-4. Connor and Zach are tied right now in 4th place. Chat, you've gained some separation. We'll see if you can make it up towards me and Jackson right now. We'll see if any of the mods can put together a fun run. Eric, you kind of broke your bad luck streak. You had a winning day on Thursday, and you're only 3 games back at Trevin, so maybe you're going to be able to move up today. We'll see.
Maybe.
Anyway, hopefully. Let's just jump into game number 1. We got Charlotte taking on the Toronto Raptors. Toronto is a 1.5-point favorite.
So in this game, we have just Goran Dragic out for the Raptors. And for the Hornets, they're without Jalen McDaniels, James Bouknight, and Cody Martin. So relatively healthy.
I'm so glad to be back to healthy games.
Mm-hmm.
Zach says he's coming for me. I got Krish's picks right here. I will, I'll just take care of them for today. Krish went Raptors.
Yep.
The Raptors are a tough team to pick, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They're a hard team to figure out.
So.
All right, chat. Poll is in the chat.
No, outside.
That's how you vote for chat. Trevin's going Raptors. Trevin goes Raptors. What are you going with, Eric? LaMelo Ball just got announced as an MVP today, or not an MVP, an All-Star today.
Yikes.
So maybe he's feeling pretty good about himself.
We have all but one of the games today are road favorites. So I was
There's been a lot of road favorites lately.
Trying to decide if I wanted to do a certain strategy or not, but I like the Raptors in this one.
I just realized my forearm's bruised. I saw it in the camera, and that's weird. Who are you going with?
The Raptors.
All right, cool. Eric's going to Raptors. I think I want to go with the Charlotte Hornets. Jackson's going Hornets. Connor's going Hornets. Do we have Zach's pick? Zach goes Hornets. Might have a split vote for the first game. That would be phenomenal. It looks like chat's going Raptors. So it is indeed a split vote. Always good to start things off with some, diversity in pick choices. Let's move on to game number 2. You got Washington hosting the Miami Wizards and another road favorite, Eric. Miami's a 7-point favorite.
Washington hosting the Miami Wizards? That's crazy.
Did I say the Miami? Dude, I'm tripping. It's a Monday, all right? Just let me get my Monday-ness out of me, man. The Washington Heat are hosting the Miami Wizards, yes.
Okay. So The Heat are without, of course, Oladipo, Markieff Morris, KZ Paula. Tyler Hero also out, and I have not seen the latest on Caleb Martin, but he was questionable last I saw. And then for the Wizards, Daniel Gafford and Bradley Beal are out.
Was there anybody out for the Heat? I was typing, and it's
Just
so hard to type in focus.
Tyler Hero is really the only one Oladipo, Morris, Paula are always out. So
got you. All right, there's chat pull chat. I am gonna go with the Miami Heat.
I'm also going Heat.
Connor, I didn't stay up that late. I just slept a lot. I hadn't taken melatonin in multiple nights, and whenever I start taking melatonin again, it like kicks my ass for a couple days. So I'm like kind of foggy right now, So Jackson's going Heat. Trevin's going Heat. What's up? Mute that bozo.
Caleb Martin's available to play, by the way. If that changes anything.
Krish went with the Wizards.
Okay. Of course he did.
We got... That's what weed is for, Tori. I don't smoke weed, man. I don't smoke weed. We're waiting on Zach, waiting on Connor. Connor goes Heat. Dude, I wish they still made the mod names blue on my end. Is it still blue mod names for you?
Yeah.
It's not blue for me anymore, so it's harder to see. Zach goes Heat. I don't know why they changed that. I wish they would let you, customize that, but... YouTube is very bare bones with everything. All right, so Crush Island.
Jackson said, this should be a sweep, LOL. And then he said, oh, never mind, forgot about Krish.
Good old Crush Island. All right. Game number 3, we got the Bulls hosting the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix is a 6.5-point road favorite.
Yeah, so the Suns are without Sark, Kaminsky, Nader, like usual, and then Campaign and Shamet also out of this one. For the Bulls, they're without, of course, Patrick Williams, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Derek Jones, and I have not seen an update on Kobe White, but he was also questionable, and the Bulls are on a back-to-back.
This is a weird game to pick. Phoenix just recently lost in Atlanta. That was on Thursday. That was my island. I went Hawks, everybody else went Suns, and the Hawks won, so that was a satisfying game. I don't know if it makes me want to pick against the Suns again or makes me want to switch it up and pick for them now.
I'm going to take the Suns, even though they keep screwing me. So is Zach.
Eric wants to get screwed.
Jackson's going Bulls. Trevin Suns.
Jackson Bulls. Trevin Suns.
What did Chris do, Suns?
Yeah. I'm going to go Bulls.
Does Chris actually look at the spreads and stuff, or does he just...
I don't know, man. I mean, Chris is just like the random wild card at the bottom of the standings. It would be intriguing if Chris was having a decent season. He was just randomly making picks. He was just a wild card, loose cannon.
Zach's going Suns.
All right, Zach's going with the Suns.
Connor is electing to go with you and Jackson.
All right, smart man. And then Chat is going Suns. So almost a split. All right, game number 4. You got the Thunder hosting the Golden State Warriors. Golden State is a whopping 12.5-point road favorite.
Yeah, so they are without Draymond, of course, James Wiseman, and Bielitsa. Also, side note, Klay Thompson had his minutes restriction bumped up to 30 minutes, I think. I don't know what it was at before, but looks like he'll be playing a little more from here on out. The Thunder are without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Mike Muscala, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Roby.
Jackson, I'm not copying your picks, bud. Trust me, I want to gain ground on you.
Gain ground, you're winning.
Slump. I know, I want to gain more ground on him.
You want to leave him in your dust.
Yes. Trevin goes Warriors. Chris went Warriors, by the way. I'm going with the Warriors. All right, see, I picked Warriors, so Jackson. Trevin goes Warriors. Connor goes Warriors. The Blazers made this Thunder team look better than they are, for sure. Connor Warriors. Connor Warriors. I already put Trevin's in. I'm tripping.
Zach went Thunder.
Zach goes Thunder. All right. Who are you going with, Eric?
It's a Warriors.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Warriors.
The picks are coming in fast, and I like it.
Warriors.
What's Jackson going with? Warriors. The Thunder just lost to the Kings by 10. Oh, wow, Jackson. You just don't want to lose ground on me. All right. Chat is going Warriors. No surprise there. It's a Zach Island. Congratulations, Zach. You now own an island. All right, fifth and final game. You got the Jazz hosting the New York Knicks. The Jazz are 8-point favorites.
All right, for this one, we have Derrick Rose and Kemba Walker out for the Knicks. Rudy Gobert out for the Jazz. And then Gay and Clarkson were questionable that last report, but this is a later game, so they don't have to have the final things in yet. So,
Yep. Chris is going with the Jazz. Zach goes Knicks. Brady Johnson goes Utah, but unfortunately he's not a mod. Trevin goes Knicks. Zach and Connor, Connor goes Knicks. I'm going Knicks. Jackson goes Jazz. What are you going with, Eric?
I'm going to hit the Jazz.
All right, Eric's going Jazz, and then Chat is going Knicks. All right, let's jump into the double downs. Let me hide those. Boom. What is Chat's double down?
Chat's double down is the Miami Heat.
Oh, second day in a row. I don't even have to put the new logo in. Krish's double down is the Wizards. That was his island, I think.
Yeah, going against the...
It's like he knew it was going to be his island.
Yeah.
Oh, did it just pull down Skype? Just like minimized all my tabs. I think you froze there for like 2 seconds. All right, you're animated again.
I don't know why, but I'm going to take the Warriors.
All right, let me just get situated. Everything glitched out for a second. All right, cool. Chris Wizards, you're going Warriors.
Jackson says Bulls.
Okay.
Connor Knicks. Zach says OKC. He wants to oppose me and double down. It's probably a good idea. Become the Tory. Double down.
I know, dude. I've actually had a pretty good double down record. Whose picks did you just say, though?
Zach is going Thunder.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a pretty good double down record since that like 0-8 start or whatever it was. I'm like 13 and...
Trevin went Raptors. This is...
Alright, Trevin goes Raptors. I haven't even been able to think about this yet. Good job, mods, getting your stuff in fast. I'm not used to it. I want to go with Miami. Me and chat always agree on this for whatever reason. So yeah, I'm going Heat. Everybody else has different double down picks. That's interesting. All right, that is picks against the spread. One last look at the standings as we head into today's action. All right. So Eric's going to bring on Steven here in a second. Let me just full screen myself, and then we'll hop over to things. There's no easy way to do this transition. But yeah, we'll get going here. We'll start talking about what's really going on in Portland, who's making the personnel decisions. We can also talk about some of the trade rumors from today. Chat, if you want to give me a couple quick hitter questions, I'll take them.
There it is.
All right. Yes, someone's coming on the show. Yes, I wanted to wait to introduce him until he was on the show, but yeah, if you didn't see the tweet, yeah, we're bringing on a third person to the show. Shocker, I know. But, why does CJ have so much trade value now? I mean, we'll see if he has trade value. If we trade him for, like, Evan Fournier and Kemba Walker, then people will be saying, see, he just had no trade value. That's kind of how it goes. It's like whatever players are traded for are automatically their trade value. Anonymous Red, thank you for that. All right, cool. Let me get us situated here, and we'll get things rolling. I don't really have a third. I'm just finishing setting up the third person slide because we don't bring on a third person that often. So let me just get that situated and going. All right, we're bringing on Stephen Vaughn. Do you want me to associate you with Rip City Radio 620? Is that what I should say?
Yeah, that's probably right.
Cool. Yeah, Stephen Vaughn of Rip City Radio 620. What's going on, man? How's your day going?
Not much, man. Just hanging out with the kids. Now talking Blazers.
Nice.
What's up, Steven? How you doing?
How's it going, Derek?
Good, man.
So
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this is cool because I've been on the radio side of things. This is like the only time I've ever talked to you is when I'm on the radio with you, pretty much, Twitter back and forth for a while. But so it's cool to have you on this side of things. And I figured this was like kind of the perfect conversation to bring you on for because there's been a lot of talk with this Clippers trade and how exactly it went down, and it seems like, it's gaining more traction in terms of, like, I saw Chad Doing tweeting today about how it's Burt Cold calling the shots. So, I want to hear what you think of how this trade went down, maybe some of the things that you might know about how it went down, and just whatever you're willing to share, man.
Yeah, I mean, what Chad said, I don't disagree with him at all. Like, it seems like to me, what I've heard, Burt Cold and Jody Allen are really running the show. And so it's hard for me to blame Joe Cronin for this trade. But what I would also say is I understand where this trade is coming from, especially if it is by the owners, because they're trying to just save as much money as they can possible while not being good. So the fact that the Blazers got back Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, none of those guys are going to help them this season. And I think that's the ultimate end game with the Blazers. They're trying to get as high a draft pick as they can.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Like, as a Blazer fan, you don't want to hear that, but I really think that's what they want to do right now. The only other thing that it would be is they make this trade early, and they still have a week left to try another trade. But if they do make a trade, I don't expect them to get anybody good back in return.
Yeah, got you. So the audio is slightly weird. Are you using earbuds? Is that the mic you're rolling with? Okay. I mean, I think we can make it work. But yeah. So here's the problem that I have, and I'm sure you already know this, Steven, with this trade is there's just no point to make this trade that early because it doesn't help a follow-up move. And this kind of a discussion that I wanted to get into with this is people say that Eric Bledsoe, he can be traded. Of course he can be traded, but his salary can't be combined with other salary going out in the trade. So it's what, $18 million? They supposedly had a trade of Norman Powell to the Pelicans, which that's what, $15.5 million. They could have attached on a minimum contract to that, maybe a Ben McLemore, maybe even a Tony Snell, and that would have been about $18 million of outgoing salary that they could have used instead of Eric Bledsoe, because no team actually wants Eric Bledsoe's contract, right? So there was just so many creative options that the Blazers supposedly had at their disposal that they turned down and got pennies on the dollar. That's basically what I see from this trade. So I'm trying to see it from, a more optimistic standpoint, because I hate that this trade is so bad in my eyes, but every way it's been explained to me, it seems like there were better options out there for Portland in order to go about what they were doing, and they didn't have to make this trade this early.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Like, if that Pelicans trade was on the table, there's no reason not to accept it. Mm-hmm. And, we've heard from different people, you guys, I've heard from other people that was actually on the table. Now, we don't know if it's for sure or not. But if it is, you had to take that trade. There's no reason not to. And so I think right now, it seems to me that Bert and Jody are panicking. Like, they want to make sure they got the money under the luxury tax just in case something didn't happen. Right? Like, if the market somehow cooled on Norman Powell or Robert Covington and they couldn't get them, then they have this trade inbound. So, in my mind, it seems like Bert and Jody just told Joe Cronin, hey, Cronin, make a deal right now, and we need to get a luxury tax just in case nothing else happens.
Yeah.
Which, again, is not great. Not for the franchise, but I think in their mind, they're trying to be as bad as possible, right? They'll never come out and say that we're tanking, right? They'll make up some crazy word like me and Chad have said, pivot. They're pivoting. But it seems like right now, with the way the season's gone, they're really going for those top picks.
Yeah, Eric, what are your thoughts?
Two things I want to say to that. One, as far as tanking goes, you don't have to trade like good assets for bad assets to tank. Like, you could have sat those guys out. Norman Rocco had been averaging 35 to 39 minutes a game like over the last since they've been back, and Rocco's been playing a ton. Like, you could play Watford more minutes. You don't have to play Rocco that much. So there's ways to do it without like giving away assets for nothing, in my opinion. And the other thing I'll say to that is, I think from what I've heard, I kind of confirmed, this is my theory, yesterday or Saturday after the game. I was thinking about it, and I felt like Jody might have had some PTSD from 2 years ago when we failed to get under the tax. We traded Scal for nothing at the deadline, but we were still a few million over that deadline, and that came back to haunt us this year by, if we stay in the tax, we're now a repeater team. So I think there's some sense of logic there from Jody's point of view. Like, no, if we have a deal on the table to get under the luxury tax now, we have to do it. And then you can, from here, you can do whatever trades you want as long as we don't go back into the luxury tax. But I want you to do this deal because I don't trust, after Neil probably told her he'd find a way to get under the tax and then failed to do so. So after that happened, Jody doesn't want to be left holding the bag in the tax again after the trade deadline. So I think she just panicked and made Cronin like take the first deal basically that let us get under the tax. But that's a stupid way to run things, but unfortunately I think that's what happened.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, that seems like what probably happened, right? And now there's going to be more trades to be made, whether it's to help the team not this year or next year. There will be another trade, but it just depends on who it is, right? Like, it seems like it'll be, if it's CJ now, it'll be for no players that are going to help. Right? It'll be just like this trade.
Yeah, but as long as we get
guys that don't help.
Draft capital, I'm fine with it. But here's my problem, though. Let's say, like, worst case scenario, we trade him for like Evan Fournier and Kemba Walker or something, and we get a first back or something, right? That trade would put us under the tax, so we didn't have to do the other one to get under the tax. So if we do a trade for CJ and we would have gotten under the tax with that trade, it's going to make this trade look even worse in my mind, because we didn't have to do it, and that kind of negates any of the financial reasons that people are using as a pro for doing this trade and getting minimal assets back for it. So to me, it's going to be really hard to fix this. And if he makes a great trade, everyone's going to be saying like, oh, great job, you redeemed yourself. But I still think it will mess us up in future trades if just because we made a decision to get under the tax with our first trade when we didn't necessarily have to.
Yeah, the Blazers just aren't in a position. They don't have enough assets where they could have afforded to trade guys like a Norman Powell and Robert Covington and not get good assets back, right? Like if they, if it's the Brooklyn Nets or Golden State Warriors where you're already like borderline contenders or already contenders or whatnot, then sure, maybe you can trade out a veteran, not get anything back, you're fine, you're still contenders. But Portland is so far off at this point that it was a situation going into this trade deadline. I made this point many times. They had to maximize all the value that for every single player, or close to maximize the value out of every single player in order to give them enough assets moving forward to make the follow-up trades, to maybe make a Ben Simmons trade if that becomes available, and then still have a couple first-round picks left to add a solid starter outside of that. The problem that I had with this trade is none of these guys are assets that you can really plug into a follow-up trade. People use Keon Johnson and say he's like a first-round pick, but the thing is, if you trade a future first, every team wants a future first. They can select whoever they want. How they, if they want a guard, if they want a forward, they can select who they want. Some teams might not want a Keon Johnson, a 6'3" guard. Maybe they have a lot of guards, so it's harder to kind of flip him as a first round pick from last year. So that's kind of my problem with this trade, is it puts Portland in a tough position. Like, even if they figured out a way to swing CJ for like a Ben Simmons sort of package, or maybe CJ for picks somewhere and then they flip those picks for a Jeremy Grant or whoever, they just don't have enough assets after that to make another move, and that basically means they're capped. This trade lowered their long-term ceiling because they just don't have the assets to make the follow-up moves necessary, in my opinion.
Do you guys think with just the Norman Powell's contracts, right? So it would be 5 years, it would be 32 in his last year of his deal. Is that a potential thing where the Blazers look at that and look at his body type, look at his skill set, and say he's not going to be worth that money at that age? And then the emergence of Anthony Simons stepping up, like you have to give him minutes. Right? With Dame out, Simons is going to play 35, 40 minutes a night, and that's what the Blazers need right now. So with Norman Powell at the situation now, all about Simons and Dame.
Yeah,
going forward. And so that's my thing about Norman Powell. So like he's a good player, an average, slightly above average shooting guard. But he, as we've noticed, you guys have talked about this, he's been bad on defense this year. His shooting has been good, but in clutch situations, I feel like he hasn't made a lot of shots just by watching him. I don't know the numbers. But to get him out of the fray, it's Anthony Simons' team now.
Yeah, I mean, me and Eric were on board with trading out both Norm and CJ. So it wasn't a situation where it's like, oh, they traded Norm, that's a bad move. Like, I'm happy that they're trying to clear a path for Simons. It's just, from what I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard this, there was suitors for both Robert Covington and Norman Powell, right? And it wasn't a situation where they had to trade Robert Covington in order to clear a pathway for Anthony Simons. Like, if you're not going to get any additional value back for Robert Covington, then you might as well just let him walk in free agency. Like, that's fine, So in terms of the Norman Powell aspect of this trade, like, you see what Karis LeVert gets flipped for yesterday. He gets flipped for a first-round pick and a very early second from Cleveland. And I don't think Karis LeVert's a better... Second. And another second. Yeah, so 2 seconds and a first-round pick in an expiring contract that isn't partially guaranteed like Bledsoe's is next year. I don't see Karis LeVert as a better player than Norman Powell. I mean, that's a different debate, but I think LeVert's a little bit
do you think Karis LeVert's contract is more valuable than Norman Powell? Because he has 2 years left.
Here's why that's not true. LeVert is asking for an extension. That's why Indiana wanted to trade him. So he's going – by the end of next summer – they're either going to go into him being an expiring contract and probably leaving at the end of that year, or he is going to sign an extension and it'll be the same length as Norm's and it'll be a raise, so he'll end up making more money than Norm's making in the final years of his contract. So I don't think it's a comparable thing because, I mean, obviously Cleveland could get out of it if it doesn't work out, or if they decide to bring Sexton back for a lot of money and don't want to pay him, then I guess they could get out of it sooner. But for most teams that I've heard, the contract was a positive, not a negative. And a lot of teams, like New Orleans, for example, Cleveland is one of them where an offer was on the table for him. There was teams, Detroit was still interested in Norm. I've heard there was as many as 15 teams that called about Norman Powell. And then you hear the Clippers GM say after the trade, like, I can't believe we got someone of his skill set that's locked in for as many years as he did, for as little as we did, basically. And so my thing is, a lot of those teams in free agency, they could never get a Norman Powell to sign at that price. They'd either have to overpay for someone like that, or they'd have to, get a lesser talent like Portland. If he wasn't our own free agent, guys like Norman Powell's caliber don't often sign here, right? So in my mind, the 4 years after this one, for certain teams, now not every team, but for certain teams, that was looked at as a positive because you knew you had him locked in at a certain rate. You didn't have to worry about free agency or him leaving or anything like that. And he's one of the most efficient guards in the NBA. Now, he didn't fit well on our team, but that doesn't mean that he's a bad player or anything like that. And I feel like that's how it kind of turned in the social media realm and in the media realm nationwide, is that like somehow he became an awful player on Portland, when it was more just he didn't fit, and with the emergence of Ant, he became expendable. It's not like he is terrible. Now, he could play better defense, of course, but in terms of offensive efficiency, he is a much better player than a lot of other players in this league at that position. And for that price tag, you see a Duncan Robinson signed for the same amount. I think his overall contract's longer and more money. Joe Harris is on a similar contract. Those guys don't play defense either, and it's just really comparable contract to players in that range. And in 4 years, when the salary cap's at like 135 million, and Powell's 32, like you said, he's making like 20 million, 21 million. That's going to still seem like a bargain because the salary cap's going to be so much higher. So I don't buy that at all. I think anyone who says it was a negative value and they had to get rid of it just doesn't understand like contracts league wide. And I feel like there was at least a handful of teams that would have loved to have him even on his contract.
But would you willing to run the risk of having to bring him back? Right? Like, you couldn't get a trade done, and then you are basically forced to trade him in the offseason. Because you can't come back to this team with a 3-guard lineup. We know that. And you talked about this. Like, he got a bad rap. And I said this talking to the chat in the 5th quarter. Like, Norman Powell has had a terrible rap because he's had to play out of position since he got here. And when they made the trade, I was all for trading CJ and go with the David Norman Powell backcourt. But it never happened. And so because of that, now he's on the wrong timeline with the Blazers. Right. And so I think that's another reason why they would want to trade him.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think other teams were knocking down the Clippers' door for Eric Bledsoe and Justice Winslow?
I think maybe for Bledsoe just because of his contract.
If there's a team,
you can buy it out.
Yeah, but it still has dead money next year on your cap.
Yeah,
So
but every team, Eric, you know this.
yeah,
Like so many teams have dead money though.
yeah, but so yeah, so that once again it brings up a unique circumstance where you'd have to have a player that a team doesn't want that's making like multiple years, right? And then the Clippers would have to take a bad contract most likely, right? So in my mind, there's not many examples of that out there. I mean,
Like I'm sure Washington would love to trade Bertans' 4 years, $16 million a year for Eric Bledsoe's contract. You know what I mean? But it's like in order
but why
to
would the
have
Clippers want that over Norman Powell?
exactly like the only way a team would value Bledsoe's contract in and of itself is if they have a really bad one of their own that they're trying to get off of.
But what's
Which
the
they're-
percentage chance that's a place for the Blazers? It's one or zero. Like he's not going to play for this team.
Yeah. But see, here's my point: is if that is the best we could hope for Norman Powell, that is a trade you make 20 minutes to the deadline. Your owner's telling you you have to get under the tax. This is the best offer. Fine, I can live with that if that's what it took. But from everything, every single national media person is saying there are very few sellers and a ton of buyers, right now.
Mhm.
And guards like Norman Powell, who are plug and play, can pretty much fit in any system off the bench in a starting lineup, can play off ball, can be aggressive and get to the rim, get to the free throw line. Like those kind of players can fit on just about any kind of team. And unlike CJ's a very specific team he needs to go to. He needs to go to a team where they need kind of a shot creator, lead ball maker, or whatever. Whereas Norman Powell can just sit in the corner and shoot threes all day if you need him to. And a team like the Clippers, obviously, when they're healthy, instead of him having to be like the number one perimeter defender, he becomes like the third best perimeter defender, and I think that'll be a much better situation for him. But like in my mind, the value of Robert Covington and Norman Powell was only going to increase over these next 6 days from Friday, and that once Jeremy Grant got traded, then the 5 teams that were interested in him will all be panicking, and then once if John Collins gets traded or something, then there's still 3 teams out there that are begging to have someone, and you have these teams like the Kings and Pelicans who are just, I think this is stupid, but they like want to somehow make a move for this year and screw their future just to make the play-in game and stuff like that. You got to take advantage of those teams. And I think those offers would have kept increasing rather than decreasing. So I have a hard time making this trade unless it's up against the gun at last offer type situation. That's my problem with it.
So is there any trade that the Blazers can make going to the trade deadline that would change your guys' minds? Because there's still a couple days left.
All right, so
Well, here, can I answer this?
yeah, go ahead.
So, first off, I'll thank it in a second to the person who donated. I'll thank your donation in a second. But if it's a follow-up move that's like not involving any of the pieces in this trade, then this trade is still a really bad trade, even if the follow-up move is really good. You know what I mean? They're independent of themselves. So, if he pulls off a good follow-up trade, I'll be saying, okay, that's a good trade. The first trade was still awful. If it's a situation, though, where, like, some team is just in love with Keon Johnson and somehow, Cronin, alongside the ownership group, like, Cronin knew this and was willing to go along with this trade for it, because there's still obviously the question, like, it seems like Cronin might not have been the one who wanted to make this move. But if a team really wants Keon Johnson and we flip Keon Johnson, we somehow get 2 first-round picks back out of it, then this trade is fine, right? Because that was basically the baseline for me, is we should get a pick for Norm and a pick for Rocco, a first-round pick. So if they can...
Or like,
Go ahead.
let's say like the asking price on a Jeremy Grant or Miles Turner is 2 firsts, but instead they're like, oh, we really like Keon Johnson and Greg Brown or something, and those are the guys they really wanted. So if we get out of having to give assets in one of those trades, then yeah, I agree with you too.
Yeah, I just don't think that's realistic, but that would be the only way to like truly justify this first trade for me.
I think the first round pick for Covington is a little wild though, Tori. Like I told you that I didn't do that. I thought 2 second-round picks at the most for Covington. He hasn't been great this year. Like, we know this. He hasn't been great. He's been okay, especially the last 20 games off the bench when he got benched after Willie Nance took a starting spot for him. But he hasn't been good all year. He hasn't shot the ball well. He's been okay off the ball defensively. On ball, we know what he is. So, like, I think two second-round picks is the most you're going to get for him. They got one.
I mean,
even less than I would have taken.
Yeah, but I mean, my favorite trade idea was to Chicago. They give our first back to us, and they would get our second round pick, which is going to be an early second round pick. It's going to be around 35, 36, and they have no idea when our first conveys back to us. And they would have matched that with like Derrick Jones Jr., who's out for 2 months or whatever, 6 to 8 weeks. So like that sort of trade, I think that's good enough value for Rocco. And you heard after Rocco got traded to the Clippers, multiple teams called expressing interest in him. So if there's multiple teams involved, then that means that in order to win that bidding war, a team's going to have to overpay. Even if you don't think Rocco's necessarily worth a first, if you have 8 teams going after him, that's enough leverage for the team trying to sell him in order to extract a first out of that team, especially if we're willing to sit here and be like, okay, well, to make it a little bit better for you, we'll also just give you our second round pick this year, which is going to be a good second round pick. So, in my opinion, great GMs maximize value for players. And if it's a seller's market, which is everything we're hearing is this is a seller's market, there's a lot of buyers, not enough sellers, then you're going to have leverage if you're in Portland's situation just because of how many teams would be going after Rocco. So that's why I think they could have extracted a first for him. Eric, I'll let you kind of add on what you want to add on.
My point is, whether it's a first or 1 second, or let's say it's no seconds and some team we just dumped his salary, right? If you trade him to a different team, it opens up so many possibilities to create a larger trade exception, which we generated a $6.5 million one. But in today's GM game with all these trade exceptions, all these draft picks, all these like if you look at the future picks owed and there's like, well, this pick belongs to this team, and if it happens to be this team, and then there's 3 other teams that it could possibly go to, and all this stuff, like, you have to find ways to be creative and use your assets to get what you need, and trade exceptions are becoming a huge part of things. But by trading Norm and Rocco to the same team, it basically eliminated a chance we had to create a bigger trade exception from this. And then this summer, so what that does is, yes, we, tank this season. The trade exception doesn't matter at all, right? But let's say we get the 4th pick, right? And we have a big enough trade exception to get a Domantas Sabonis or name your player you want to get. And all of a sudden we're like, okay, we'll give you the 4th pick for him. And I'm not saying I'll do that. I'm just using that as an example. But, like, that eliminates this possibility this summer to use something super creative by using multiple teams to create the biggest trade exception possible. And now the $6.5 million one might still be an asset, but instead of having to give someone Bledsoe, which they'd have to guarantee his money over the summer if he's still on our roster, we could have basically absorbed a contract if we did this right, especially if we trade CJ. We could have mixed that into this Clippers trade and possibly come up with a much bigger exception. So that's my problem, is just the nearsighted of saying we're going to trade both of these teams to both these players to one team and just get under the tax that way, because it's not creative enough in today's game to you have to be smart as a GM and get even if it's only a few million more, like each million counts and can bring in more players, and you have to find ways to get the most possible assets to regroup this summer. And that's my problem. This trade, yes, you can make a trade to be bad so you get the best possible pick, but how does it help you once you get that pick, put the best possible team around here? And I think this trade failed in every aspect to do that.
What are you guys' realistic expectations for next season? Because I think that's the big question. It seems like to me they're not too high on this team, right? They're dumping salary for a potential draft picks. That's what they're doing right now.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, see, and like, I would have been. That's kind of the route that I wanted, right? That's the route me and Eric, like, we've laid out multiple, options that the Blazers supposedly had. And, if there's a ton of buyers, we know who the buyers are and we know what they're looking for. And it's pretty obvious what player values were. We can argue whether Robert Covington was worth a first or 2 seconds or whatever, but we have a ballpark idea of what teams would be willing to give up for those guys. So it's a situation where I just lost my train of thought. Eric, go ahead.
So for me, for next year, this, like Tori said, there was a way to maximize assets this trade deadline to maybe add whatever pieces you needed and get a high pick, right? So like I mentioned, there were several trade scenarios, like if we trade CJ, where we could have created an almost $21 million trade exception. And that combined with, let's say we get like a couple firsts for CJ. Let's say we trade him to the Knicks for 2 firsts or something. We could have found a way to generate enough of a trade exception to then have picks from other teams.
Well, yeah.
And then also get whatever player we wanted. Like I said, Miles Turner, Jeremy Grant, Sabonis all would have fit into that trade exception. OG Anunoby, all those kind of guys would have fell into that trade exception.
Yeah. I feel like we're straying kind of from his question, like in terms of expectations next season.
But I'm saying, like, so my expectations were based on how well we did at this trade deadline, is what I'm coming back to say. So if we would have...
That's what I was trying to say. I lost track of myself.
If Cronin had an opportunity to maybe save the Dame window. So that's where I was coming back to. And maybe get enough assets. But now, as of right now, we still owe our first-round pick to Chicago. We only have, I think it's 3 second-round picks now we can trade in the future. So that pick's not going to convey, right, because we're going to be in the lottery. So we're still not going to be able to trade a first this summer unless we somehow change the compensation or the protections on it, which would be a mistake, too, if we're going to go young, right? And then, so it's just frustrating me because, like, I saw a path to possibly save it in the Dame window, and I felt like this trade ended any possibility of that. So now I'm completely down. We could get lucky and get a top 3 pick and get Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren, and he could be the perfect 4 next to Dame, and we could get super lucky signing the best possible player with our mid-level exception. But outside of that, it's tough, and all those options were available even if we didn't make this crappy trade, so that's why I'm struggling.
Yeah, Steven, what are your expectations, and like what do you want to see happen? Because I'm curious where like you would go forward if you were the GM of this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was the only person that would have bet on the under this season for the Trailblazers. I told lots of people in private conversations I could see this being a train wreck season, and not even this bad, but just with a 3-guard lineup not working out, Chauncey in his first year, I saw a way that this happens, and so I think the best way for the Blazers is somehow you got to gather young assets. You got Anthony Simons. Dame is still coming off the injury. We don't know if he's going to come back healthy, and that's the biggest question. Also, with the Blazers, is Dame healthy? Is he going to be back to the regular Damian Lillard? We don't know that, and I assume he's going to because he's Damian Lillard and he's the man. But we can't assume that right now. So I think Anthony Simons is the one young asset you have. I like this Steer Little. I don't know if he's a starting 3 in this league. I know he's a role player at least, but how much value does that really have in the open market, right? So you have Dame, Anthony, Little, and that's about it for assets on this team, like valuable assets. And so for me, you need to gather those and try to get in that top 3 pick. That's your fastest way to elevate your team to a quote-unquote contender. Right, you look at the Cavs amassed all those picks, but then they get Evan Mobley, and now they elevate. You look at the Raptors; they sucked for a year. Now they get Scotty Barnes. He's been a big part of the team. Now they're competing for a player spot, and I think that's the best way for the Blazers. If the Blazers don't gather this top 3 pick, I think this could be really bad coming to next season. And I think this is but I also think this is the best path to continue the Dame window, right? I almost think this Dame window is closed, unfortunately. And so it's tough for me to say that because it's like I want Dame to win here. I just don't know if it would ever happen unless the Blazers get a top 3 pick and that guy actually is as good as he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we agree on how they should go about it. It's just frustrating. Like, I think they could have gotten back, I think they could have gotten back 2 firsts for both Norm and Rocco. And then you could have flipped those 2 firsts for, if you really wanted Jeremy Grant, maybe you could have flipped those 2 firsts or a first and 2 seconds, and then maybe we add on our own second. Or you know what I mean?
Well,
like,
they're doing exactly what they've been doing already. Like, they traded for Norman Powell, they traded for Robert Covington, all these veterans, and it didn't work. It got the Blazers to, the 6th seed against the Nuggets, and they lost in 5 games.
But that would have been part of a bigger shakeup, Like, say you did that and you flipped it, you got a Jeremy Grant. I still wanted a CJ trade on top of that, right? And I wasn't really a fan of Jeremy Grant. I'm just using that as a hypothetical. But you still have a CJ trade on top of that, and you have your CJ replacement, which we've never really had. And people thought it was going to be Norman Powell. Then, in my opinion, he phoned it in defensively this year and didn't want to be here. So we moved on from Norm. Like, if you were able to use Norm and Rocco to get a similar caliber player to Norm in the front court, and then you were able to trade CJ, maybe get some draft picks, tank the rest of the year, and then if you get a top 3 pick, then you're sitting really, really good, right? Maybe you have a Jeremy Grant, a top 3 pick, and then you have, I don't know, say they traded CJ and they got 2 firsts back and a Josh Hart, and Josh Hart's your 3rd guard, and then you could have taken those 2 firsts from CJ this offseason and tried to get something else. Right, you would have had your Jeremy Grant, your top 3 pick, and then whatever you got from CJ to go out there and actually make something happen. And at that point, depending on like how good your rookie is and how good Simons continues to progress, then you might be looking at something. Or you could have, or you could have taken or you could have taken that top 3 or 4 pick as well as the 2 picks you got back from CJ, and maybe you're able to go get a Jaylen Brown, and then you're sitting there with Dame, Ant, Jaylen Brown, Jeremy Grant, you re-sign Nurkic, right? Like, that's the thing, is that lineup I would have been, like, I think that's a borderline contender next year, you know what I mean? It just required them maximizing the value for Norm and Rocco in order to get the assets to go out and get, like, a Jeremy Grant caliber player, Domantas Sabonis caliber player, whoever, just hypothetically a player in that
But to fully tank, Tori, you have to trade for no good players, right? And that's what this trade was. It was for nobodies. And that's the problem, right? Like, if you trade for Jaylen Brown and you put him in the lineup, you can't tell him to not play. And if he wants to play, he's going to play.
We wouldn't have been able to trade for somebody as good as Jaylen Brown, but, like, if we added Jeremy Grant and took out Norm and Rocco and added in Jeremy Grant, I still think this team sucks. Yeah, and we took out CJ for picks.
Like, the way they're going about now, this is properly tanking. They're trying to
I think it would have been good enough to tank. I think Simons, like, if you have, like, Simons, McLemore, Snell, Grant, and Nurkic, I think that's a good enough lineup to tank. Absolutely. I think that's it's like every spot you gain like a 5% chance of the top 4. Even if you're the worst team in the league, you still have a more likely possibility of ending up outside the top 3 than you do inside the top 3. And right now, in terms of the draft, if it's like 4th or 5th, those are guards. Like, that tier is just kind of straight guards. So it's still a situation where even if they, with this trade package, try and tank, they're still not likely to get into the draft position that they need. And then it's a situation where you're absolutely screwed. Whereas in this scenario, you would have at least had the assets to kind of work around that. Maybe you end up with the 6th or 7th pick, whatever. You still would have had the assets necessary to try and surround a team. And then if you end up surround Dame with a better team. So that's kind of my standpoint on this. It's not, I don't like selling Norm and Rocco for less value just to try a strategy that's more likely not to work instead of just trying to maximize value for everyone. Go ahead, Irk.
Well, to be fair, too, I don't know if Steven knows this or not, but you and I absolutely do not want Jeremy Grant or Miles Turner. We don't think those are the keys to moving forward anyway.
It's
so
just
that was just an
hypotheticals,
example. But, okay, would you agree that in this trade, everyone's saying that Keon Johnson has the value of a first because he was drafted in the first round, right?
Mm-hmm. People have
Steven,
been
would you
saying
agree with that?
Hey, can you guys?
Oh, Steven froze. Yeah, are you,
You there,
are you
Steven?
back? Oh, there you go.
I'm on my phone now, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little better.
So in this trade, people are saying that Keon Johnson had the value of the first rounder we would have gotten back in a different trade, right? So I don't know if you can hear me or not, but so in my mind, if you're truly tanking, you trade everyone for as many picks as possible, right? You don't trade for anyone. Like maybe you get a young player back in a deal that has to be thrown in for salary purposes or something. Like Boston was rumored to be given up on like a Romeo Langford or Aaron Nesmith or something like that. So maybe you get one of those guys, or maybe New Orleans has one of their young guys they throw into a trade or whatever. But you don't get a guy that you're not sure about back in lieu of a first round pick. So you could have made a crappy trade. Like if we trade CJ to the Knicks, we better get multiple first round picks for taking on Fournier and Kemba Walker's contract if that's what it comes down to, right? And that helps you get worse players. And you, at the end of the season, you have all these picks, right? So if we would have just gotten a first out of this trade instead of Keon Johnson, or in addition to him, or however you want to do it, if we would have traded him to whatever team gave us a first-round pick, the return could have been just as bad or worse in terms of the players we got back. But we have that trade asset this summer, or potentially if it's a 2022 pick, we could have two rookies then that we have two chances to hit a home run, like New Orleans did with Herb Jones and their 35th pick, and multiple teams have players this year that are contributing, right, and playing really well as rookies. So like that's my problem is, even if you were going the route to be as bad as possible, you trade for Ricky Rubio. You do the Cavs trade, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you only get first and you don't get the 2 seconds back, you get Ricky Rubio, who's not playing this year. You waive him as soon as the trade deadline's over, just in case you need his contract for something. And then he's done, and you have no player that plays, and you have the Cavs pick, which will be like in the mid-20s, right? I think that would have been much more valuable than having a Keon Johnson and then wondering what we're going to do with Bledsoe, and then if we cut him, having still $4 million in dead money on the table next year.
Yeah, I think we can all agree, like, the Blazers hurried this trade.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever reason it was, whether it was just because the ownership was putting pressure on it or whatever it was. Like, was it Joe Cronin wanted to get it done early so maybe he can make another move? We still are yet to be seen, but the trade was done early. And so I understand, like, everyone's problem with the trade. I mean, we had so many callers after the last game just venting about how bad they're feeling right now, because it's a terrible feeling. Like, knowing that there is no future this season is a bad feeling to have. And not knowing what the future holds with Dame, and is Anthony Simons really the guy? I got numbers that say he may not be like the true number one guy going forward, but the Blazers are going to pay him that money, and there's no other choice to do it besides that. So I'm with you guys. Like, they hurried this trade, so I have to hope that there's another trade afterwards. But they really did this trade just to be bad. Like, I think that's all we can agree on. It is too bad because there was, like you guys have said, the Norm Powell contract, and I kind of made it out like I think it's a negative contract. It's not a negative contract, but I do think the right team got it. Like the Clippers, he's a perfect fit for them. But other teams like the Blazers, it's a terrible fit because of the length of the contract, because of his age. He doesn't fit what the Blazers are going to want to do when they can compete.
Yeah,
and so,
and
that's my thing. Like, I think the Blazers paid a premium just to get out of the 5 years of Norman Powell when they probably didn't have to, like you guys said. And so from my view, it's like I don't hate it because they had to get the Norman Powell contract. Like, they could have done better, but I don't want to run the risk of running back the 3-guard lineup next season, right? Like, just like with Nurk, I want them to trade Nurk this season because I don't want them to bring Nurk back. And the more they hold on to him, the more likely he comes back to the Blazers somehow. We know how this story is going to end with Nurk. He's going to be good for 20 games. He's going to be bad for 20 games. But he's going to shoot around 50% and give you 14 points and 10 rebounds and be an okay defender from time to time. But he's never going to be that building block. And the more they hold on to him, the more that it's likely that they keep him in return with him next season, which is something I don't want to see. I didn't want to see Norman Powell come back and be part of some 3-guard lineup with him, Damian Simons. That was my big fear. And so for that reason, I'm okay with the trade just to get out of the contract, just to guarantee they're trying something different.
All right. So, being cap nerds, right?
Yes.
Norman Powell leaves last summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't re-sign in Portland. Let's just say hypothetically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be an L in the trade, and we knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're still over the tax, right? So we maybe free up the full mid-level exception, but we couldn't even sign anyone to the money we did have, right? So it would have been that much better. Maybe we get a Kelly Oubre to sign here, like 10 million versus 12 million or whatever he signed for. Maybe.
I was cool with the Powell. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say no. It's a total loss if they don't bring Norman Powell.
Yeah. So here's the problem though. Blazers trade him away, right? You want to get rid of his contract, right? They're still in a situation where they can't replace him now, right? Because they didn't get anything back to replace him with, right? So that goes back to an early question for you. The only way this can salvage, in my opinion, is if there's a front office dumber than ours that values Bledsoe and we get something back for his contract, right? Because now we're in a situation where if we buy Bledsoe out, say there's no trade partners and we can't do anything with him, we can't really attach picks to him or whatever. So maybe, if, like I said, we get a star with the third pick or whatever pick we get, maybe we get that Jaylen Brown that way or something instead of drafting one of those guys. But in lieu of that, like, now we're in a situation where we're still pretty much near the salary cap, or if we're a little below, it's like basically the level of the mid-level exception, which we'd be able to pay even if we were over the cap. So how do we get from his contract, his productivity or whatever, switching it to a different position? Instead, we just said, no, let's clear him for the team. And in my mind, we're in the same now spot that we were last summer if we lost him, because it's going to be really hard to trade the assets we got back for something comparable at a different position, or even a little less comparable, but a better fit maybe. So that's my main problem is cap-wise moving forward. Everyone's saying, oh, look, cap flexibility, roster balance. It didn't do anything to fix the issues that we've had with this problem for teams for years. And that's my problem, is there's no way out of this. Whereas if we didn't panic and stuff, there could have possibly been a way out. And I think that was a risk you had to take versus just getting rid of his contract, because now you're stuck in this limbo where every year you might not have cap space still, but you don't have anything to like fill your roster with unless you get lucky on draft picks.
Yeah, and I think the easiest way to portray this is like, our roster balance has been weird, so people are prioritizing that. But it's a situation where we also, it's roster balance versus roster talent. We still need to become more talented. We need a more balanced roster, and we need a more talented roster, right? Back when we had, Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless starting at the 3 and 4, that was a pretty well-balanced roster and rotation, and everybody said at the time, Chad Doing said this at the time, Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless are not talented enough as our forwards. They can't shoot well enough. They can't do anything off the dribble. It's not a talented enough roster despite it having good balance. So at that point, it was like, just go out and get anybody who's more talented. I remember Chad Doing begging us to trade for Ryan Anderson back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago. Ryan Anderson, just because he can make threes. So back then, it's like getting more talent on the roster was a priority. Now it's like we might have I think we have had a more talented roster than we did back then, but the balance was really bad. So now it's everybody's not really worried about the talent. It's like, oh, we just got to trade Norm out so we can balance the roster, so then that trade goes down and we don't get many assets back. We don't get much talent, and it's, oh, well, we balance the roster. But we still have to get more talented as well. So it's just frustrating for me because I think we could have went about balancing the roster in a way that would have been able to make us more talented in the future, and we didn't maximize that opportunity, and we didn't really have the margin for error to not maximize that opportunity. So that's kind of where it comes back, to the main point for me, where they just didn't get enough back.
I mean, you just got to hope that there's another trade in line, right?
Oh, I'm fingers crossed. Who are some names that you want? Like, who would make you happy if we traded for them?
I mean, honestly, I don't know, Tori, because I really don't know what the direction of this team is. We haven't known the direction of this team.
What about you personally, though?
Since he's been there, no direction on the upper front office part of this franchise, and that's the problem. That's always been the problem. It always will be the problem. Until that doesn't get fixed, like, how far can the Blazers go? And I really think this was the first sign of, like, they are saying we need to bottom out. And by trading the Norm Powell contract, and I understand that they didn't get as much as, like, we all would wanted to, they're trying to be as bad as possible. And as you said, elevate the talent, because at the top half of the draft, there are guys that fit this roster balance-wise and skill-wise, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this, for the Blazers, I think for them to get back to where you want them to be, the best course of action is to try to get a top pick. But you run that risk, because if you trade for veteran players that you have to tell them to sit out or fake injuries or whatever, like, that's a rough spot to put guys in, right? You don't want to make that. And so to do this trade and get no way back in return, I think they're really trying to tell people, without saying it, we're rebuilding. And it's going to be Anfernee Simons is going to be this top draft pick, and we're going to go from there, right? Even without Dame or with Dame, we'll figure it out when he comes back next season, if he's healthy or not. Because he wants that contract. He wants that extension of 2 years, $106 million. And if the Blazers are no good, I can see the Blazers giving to him, because the fan base is going to have something to cheer about. But will he earn that money? Will he be worth $50 million when he's 34, 35 years old? I'm going to say probably not. And so I think they need to capitalize on this draft pick, because it's been a bad season, and it's now the opportunity where you have guys you can build around. Like I said, Desir, Simons, Dame, Larry Nance, if you bring him back, those are 4 solid players you can build around. You get that top draft pick, and then you go from there, and it's not going to be as far as a fall as it would be if you totally rebuild and trade Damian Lillard right now.
Yeah, I want to make this point about the extension, because I feel like people think about it, $50 million a year, and they think about it in terms of, like, today's money and today's salary cap and today's CBA. Like, that seems absurd, right? Like, a player making $50 million a day right now. In 4 or 5 years, there is going to be a new television deal. I think that's up in 2024, 2025. So that's going to raise the salary cap up to a point where it's like $50 million is like $35 million right now. And I feel like people...
2016, when the Blazers signed those deals, that those deals would look okay. Alan Crabb, think about that. That deal wasn't looked as a terrible deal.
That's Alan Crabb. Alan Crabb's not Damian Lillard, though, you know.
Yeah, but there was a lot of other deals, not just Alan Crabb, around the league that people thought terrible because of the money. Well, they turned out to be bad deals.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there saying, like, teams are going to regret this back then, but, you know, it's different when it's Dame and it's given him essentially a max, you know? It's, like, basically the same as his max would be right now, you know? It's just a higher number because the salary cap's going to go up. So I think here's something that I wanted to ask you, because I've heard you talk about... I don't want to speak for you, but what are your, like, opinions on a Dame trade? Because I've heard you talk about it on air before and how you were, like, kind of open to it.
I don't. I think if you can get the right deal, I think it'd be okay to trade Damian Lillard. And the only reason I do that is you talked about the talent versus the balance of the roster. I think you would balance out the roster much better. And then you would run with Anfernee Simons as your lead guard. And even you could have CJ as your top scorer, and you're fine, right? We know that CJ can put in, but it obviously would have to be for the right deal, the right player. And as me, like, I'm a Blazer fan, but I always hold a grudge against them because I did work for them and I got laid off by them, so I will always a little bit.
I didn't know that.
Diehard fan, and so, like, for me, like, I love Dame. He's a great player, great for the city, but, like, I don't have that attachment to him, and so I do think on the court wise, like, it could help you for a certain player. Like, I'm not going to go out and actively try to trade him, but for the right deal, I'm not against trading Damian Lillard.
Yeah, here's my reason against all of that is, and this is the point when I heard you talking about on air. This is like the point that I was dying to make. So he's been extremely loyal in situations where like no other superstar might have been loyal, right? And he's been extremely loyal to Portland. As an organization, I think it's morally correct to be loyal back to him, even if it's not necessarily like, oh, the best for the roster or whatnot. Because if you have a superstar that's been as loyal as he is, that's the face of the franchise, and you go back on that loyalty and you just trade him even though he doesn't want to be traded, how could you expect a superstar in the future to be loyal to the organization? If Anthony Simons sees that and he becomes a superstar, how can you expect him to not want to go out and seek greener pastures? Because in the past, his mentor wanted to be loyal to Portland, and that didn't matter to an organization. They just shipped him out for, a better roster balance or whatnot.
I think the argument would be there's over 300 million reasons why. The Blazers have given Dame, at the end of his contract, over $300 million. If that's not giving Damian Lillard what he wants...
He would get that anywhere else, though.
But they've given it to him, right? And they've given him the franchise. They've let him be the face. They chose him over LaMarcus. LaMarcus was here before Damian Lillard. Dame gets drafted. The fans like him. They say, Dame, you're the face. You're the center of our team. We're going to build around you. We're going to give you Adidas. We're going to give you all this stuff. Like, $330 million, of course I would take that. Get a coach like Terry Stotts who lets him pull from 35 with no regrets. Like, he runs this organization, which is great because he's a great player and he's great for the city. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, like, he has a good deal here in Portland. There's a lot of reasons why he wouldn't want to leave.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I don't want to comment. I mean, Adidas had nothing to do with the Portland organization, and
it's a lot at Adidas headquarters in Portland.
And I mean, honestly, that's some LaMarcus Aldridge type logic that you got there going on, because teams don't have to decide between one or the other. That, like, LaMarcus made it seem like that we were choosing Dame over him, but it didn't have to be a choice. They could have been good together, and he could have stayed. And that guy chose to be, a guy who went back on his word and left. So I respect Dame. I think
I don't mean to say I don't.
No, I mean, it sounds like when you say oh, he's a good player, like, no, he's like, I mean, inarguably top 3 Blazer of all time. And it's arguable how high he is for some people on there. Like, I know someone, a particular Godfather person had an argument on Twitter yesterday about how Drexler was number 1 or whatever. But those aside, like, that's not important right now. But, like, to me, this is a case where the NBA has it set up to where if you get a max contract, you are capped at how much you can make. If this was baseball, and like LeBron would probably get $1 billion contract, right? So, like, I don't blame players for taking the money because it is set up to where you can only make a certain amount for a certain amount of time. And I mean, if you want Dame gone, you better hope that this like abdominal surgery, in my mind, is not going to help him get back. Because if he gets back to doing what he does, then he has a career similar to Chris Paul, where he's still fine in a few years. I think he's still absolutely worth that money. And in my mind, even if he's not, I would be loyal back, like Tori said, and I would give him whatever he wants. If he wants to be here, he has earned it, in my mind, his right to be here and try to win here. And I think if you have a star that says that his whole career, I want to bring a ring to Portland, I want to win here, then as soon, I'm going to stay through all the ups and downs. But the first sign of maybe he's aging, maybe he's got this injury, maybe he won't be the same, see you later. I know it's a business, but I wouldn't run it that way. And I would be mad if the Blazers did, especially in a small market where who knows how long it'll be before we get the next Dame. And we'll probably become the Sacramento Kings and never go to the playoffs for 20 years if this happens. So, like, in my mind, you risk it. It probably won't happen. He probably won't win a ring here. But at least we can say we tried and gave him everything to try and do that. And I just think it would be so disrespectful to just kick him out like the first year he ever has like an even slightly questionable year, and it could have just been because of an injury.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that I would trade him for sure. I mean, I'm not trying to say like.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Yeah, I'm not trying to like say I was more speaking in general,
Right. Like on court basketball thing, I think that trading Dame isn't the worst idea. But even if I'm GM, I would never trade Dame because I know the city would turn on me right away.
Yeah.
Right? He does love you.
I mean, it could be why they have Cronin in the position he is, because they're just setting him up to be the fall guy. Maybe like that. That would be in line with the trade that happened, right? From everything we're hearing.
I just like when people talk about, the Blazers haven't treated Dame fairly and like by putting a good roster out. I was like, no, like they've given him over $300 million guaranteed. They've made him the face of the franchise. Like they don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
I see that argument with CJ, but
if he wants to be here, it doesn't mean the Blazers when they're down they can't trade him. They can still trade him even if he wants to be here or not. And so the Blazers have really invested in him, and he's invested in the Blazers. It's been a good partnership. That kind of stuff, like, it just bothers me because, like, they have given him everything. They've given him the keys to the franchise. And I would keep it. Like, I would keep it because he's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at it a little differently because I see it like he's earned that. You know what I mean? Like, he's become such a good basketball player and he's such a good representative of the franchise that it's not like the franchise giving that to him, it's him earning that from the franchise, right? Like, he would have made $300 million no matter where he went, so I don't view that as like, oh, the franchise gave him $3 million as if it was like a favor or anything, because he earned that. That was his market value. If there's no max contract, he would have made even more. So it's a situation where that doesn't come into the equation for me because that's his worth, and he would have got that from any franchise.
Imagine if Dame was in the late 80s when Paul Allen took over the team and could pay free agents whatever he wanted, tried to buy a championship. I can't imagine how much money he would have given Dame.
Ownership percent of the team.
Yeah, ownership, yeah.
What do you guys think? So if they did consider trading Dame and on the court, it would make the Blazers better. Like, in your mind, I don't even know what the player would be. I don't know the trade.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys open to trading Dame if it would make you better on the court, make you better to get the championship?
No, because I think it's just deeper than I think it's just deeper than that. And the part of that goes back to it sets a bad precedent for any stars that you have. Like, if you're willing to trade a guy who's been undyingly loyal to your franchise the first moment he has a down season, I think stars are going to see that in the future, and they're not going to be loyal to us because they couldn't trust that this organization would be loyal back to them. So I think, if you let Dame ride it out, no matter how good Anthony Simons is, I think he would want to follow in his footsteps and be a Blazer for life, right? But if you trade Dame and Anthony Simons becomes a star and becomes, maybe a top 20, 30 player, I mean, obviously just a hypothetical, or maybe it's a different star, maybe it's whoever we draft this year, and they see what happened to Dame, I don't think they're anywhere near as likely to stick around. So I think it's like there's no trade that makes us so much better on the court that it outweighs those potential future ramifications for me. And then it's also just like going back on the loyalty thing. It's almost like that extra little bit of morality for me in regards to he's been loyal to us. We should be loyal to him. That's why I wouldn't trade him, even if it made us better on the court.
I believe we have not done everything we can to put the best team on the court for Dame. And if we trade him before ever even giving him another star maybe, or another, I would rather go all in, trade everybody, give Dame a second star, and let him be happy, and fill out the roster and give him a legit chance with a good roster and hopefully a good coach this time, and go about it that way. So if we try that, let's say we traded for a Jaylen Brown or something and it didn't work out and whatever, then maybe, in a couple of years I could see doing that. But if we trade Dame right now, I mean, I like the hypothetical question, but I mean, we're not getting Giannis, right? We're not getting LeBron. I mean, maybe we could get LeBron, I guess, in it when he's like 39 or something. But like, like, I mean, even if we traded Dame to like the Oklahoma City Thunder for 15 firsts and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or something, like, we're still like a long ways away from winning a championship, and that's not probably going to happen anyway. So like, I would rather just give Dame every possible chance to win a ring. If at some point in his career it doesn't work out and we tried everything, then fine. But I don't think there's a single person who's a Blazer fan who can say we've given Dame the best possible roster around him to win a championship. And so I feel like that's unfair to then, when he's sitting here saying, give me some help, and we don't give him help like he did last summer, to then say, oh, see, you're not good enough, see ya. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see him with a good enough team to see what he can do, to have those 55-point games against Denver in the playoffs with one other freaking person who can score a basket in the fourth quarter in overtime. Just one person. That's all it would have taken, right? Like, just give him some help first, and then you could talk about, okay, it's just not working out. But, like, don't give up on Dame before you've even given him a legit roster to build around, in my opinion.
Yeah. Chad and me have joked about this on the air. Like, the Blazers haven't been contenders for 22 years. So, like real championship contenders for 22 years since they lost to the Lakers and Shaq and Kobe. Like, I'm with you. They haven't given the best roster around it. Like, Neil needed to do a lot more moves. He was always afraid to trade CJ, always afraid to make any big move to help Dame out. And so I'm with you guys in that way. But, you know, I think, again, it's probably a little dark and cynical part of me that I still hold the grudge against the Blazers. Like, I can't fall in love with their play like I used to. So, you know, I'm always looking to like try to improve the roster the best I can. And if that is trading Dame, like, I would explore it. But again, I wouldn't trade him just because I think the backlash, like you guys said, like, he has earned everything he's gotten, and I would never argue that. And they got to do better for him, like on the roster side, because they've never given him a great roster. But if it was to help the team, like, I would definitely explore it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Go ahead.
What would that look like ideally to you?
Again, I have no idea. That's the thing. Like,
okay.
There is no trade. Is it Tyrese Maxey and Ben Simmons? Like, does that make your team better? No. Like, is it Shai Gilgeous-Alexander draft picks? No. Like, Jaylen Brown maybe? Like, if you had Jaylen Brown, CJ, Anthony Simons, like, is that your three? Is that better? Like, I could maybe argue that is a better team than right now, but it's no closer to a championship, right? It doesn't make them a championship contender.
All right, I'll put a chat poll. I'm curious to see. So, what poll should I put, Eric? Would you trade Dame if it made the roster better?
If it got us closer to winning a championship, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll put that poll in. And then we'll probably wrap up the stream in like 5 minutes or so.
So,
go ahead.
So, you would be open to trading him for the right thing, but you can't think of anything that's the right thing? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think Jaylen Brown right now, like, realistically, because we don't know what Dame is right now. Mm-hmm. Is he come back healthy or not? And it's so up in the air right now. I need to see Dame come back, because if he comes back healthy, I want to see him and Simons, because that's the highest offensive potential that the Blazers have had, you know, for years. Those two in the backcourt, that's the best offensive team you could have. And so I mean, again, I'm not looking to trade Dame actively, but if something were to come up, like Anthony Davis, right? If the Blazers could get Anthony Davis for Dame.
Okay.
I mean, Anthony Davis would want to be here, and he's injured, and he's not better, so I don't know.
Anthony Davis is, when he's healthy and he's right, he's better than Dame.
I mean, not in the past, like, year and a half. Like, A, he's never healthy. He's never consistently healthy. And B, like, the past year and a half, he hasn't been the same AD as he was before. I understand that. If we're talking, like, 2018, 2019, like, sure. Right now?
But the difference with Davis is, when he's healthy and right, he plays defense. He's a good defender. Dame's never been that defender. Can you actually win with Dame as your best player being a below-average defender?
But you can't win with AD as your best player. When has he ever done anything? You know what I mean? Like, I think if you have a superstar, like, I discount guys, even if they're good defenders, I discount superstars where, like, they can't run the offense on the perimeter. Because if you're a great player and you can control the offense like that with your off-the-dribble game, your playmaking, your scoring ability, then it catapults your offense so much. And while Anthony Davis is a really, really good offensive player, it's not a situation where he can, like, fully take the reins and create for others and run pick and roll, and he's not that type of player. So, like, that's why I think he was never done anything as the best player on the team. Go ahead.
Anthony Simons, CJ, Anthony Davis. Is that team better than Dame, Anthony Simons, and whatever you can trade CJ McCollum for?
Not in my opinion, because I think, here's the thing, like, as far as his injury, I think he's going to come back and be the same old Dame that he's ever been. He was dealing with the injury right before he was out for the rest of the season. He was having a really good stretch, so I don't think that he's not going to come back the same player, so that's obviously affects the conversation. Go ahead, Eric.
He was on a team his first, 7-8 years in the league. He had Drew Holiday with him, who's arguably better than any player Dame has had in his outside of the Aldridge years. And their crowning achievement was beating us in the first round, and they made the playoffs one other time in that time frame. And I know some of that was injury, but that guy has never proven to be able to carry a team or to even be like the main guy in a team until he was second fiddle to one of the greatest players ever.
Hey, you're just asking me for names. I was just throwing
names
out.
I know. I'm just saying. Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not against, like, look actively trying to.
See, this is my problem. Okay, you trade Dame for Anthony Davis, right? Like, I don't know. In my mind, maybe that team is good enough to contend. Maybe if Anthony Simons reaches his potential, but like, chances are that's, a second round team, and we just traded Dame for Anthony Davis for no reason, right? Like, that's the kind of trade like I would avoid at all costs with Dame. Like I said, maybe if it's like I don't know, like a younger player like a Jason Tatum, and you got like 5 firsts or something like that. Boston would never do that, but like it would have to be like an Anthony Davis type player and assets to put around him. But like, that's very unlikely in my mind.
Oh, I'm with you. I think like this, it's the same exact ceiling, right? If Dame's your best player, it's the same ceiling. Like, you're probably championship with those two as your best guys. And so I'm with you. Like, you need to find another guy to go with Dame. He's probably even better than Dame to really reach that potential.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to see them put the pieces around him to
Jabari Smith.
Eric's a big Jabari Smith fan. Do you have any like draft crushes, Steven?
Oh, Jabari Smith, man.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Watching him play. Watch that Alabama-Auburn game, man. That dude is nice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, honestly, part of me would rather us get the 3rd pick instead of the 1st pick, though, because then at least we won't be in a position to mess it up. Like, I'm pretty even on I'm pretty even on Banchero, Chet Holmgren, and Jabari Smith. I think they're all like very close and all make sense for this team. So like, if we got the 3rd pick, it's not going to be another Greg Oden situation. So
at least, well, I guess Chet could kind of be a center eventually, but at least none of them are like generational big men that you have to take, right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Stu.
Smith and Holmgren. I think Banchero, Duke. I think right now he just plays a little bit of bully ball, and that kind of stuff bothers me in college. Like, reminds me a little bit of Jabari Parker. Right, when Jabari Parker was in college, he played a lot of bully ball. Marvin Bagley, even, like, both Duke guys, they just bullied people down and tried to get to their spot using their body because they were bigger than other guys. Where I think Jabari and Chet are more skilled guys, and you can see Holmgren's defensive prowess right now. Like, he's only going to grow into his body and get bigger. So I'm more.
Chet's not going to be in a position where he's used to bullying people. You know what I mean? He's like the opposite of Banchero in that. But I'm a Gonzaga fan. I'm super biased, so everyone knows Torrey wants Holmgren. Yeah, so
most fans I talk to at 620, man, they don't want Holmgren just because of Zach Collins. They're already scared off. But Right?
Is it the Gonzaga connection, or is it like what's the reason?
That's the problem. Is he's white from Gonzaga and he's tall. So all three of them, they're like, oh no, he's the next Zach Collins. Like, no, they play nothing alike. But that's why I like Holmgren though. But he's a good guy.
Dude, I've heard him compared to Bull, and that drives me crazy too.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah. Dude, I remember the first stream me and Eric actually ever did was the draft that Bull got drafted, where he drafted Nas, and I remember the chat, man. It was the first live stream we had ever done, and the chat's just, no, go get Bull, go get Bull. I'm like, why do you guys want Bull so much? Every year, it's like there's an Oregon guy that everybody just wants, it's Jordan Bell. I remember some people wanted Tyler Dorsey, and I guess Dylan Brooks has worked out, but, I mean, it's like anytime there's ever an Oregon player in the draft, guys, they get so overrated by this fan base.
Yeah, the guys that actually turn out, like Chris Boucher, Dylan Brooks, like those are the guys that would be okay, and those were even the high guys that people wanted. People wanted, like you said, Jordan Bell,
Yeah. Daniel says, was Jordan good, though, right? He could block shots, but undersized bigs with no skills don't really have a place in today's NBA. Like, undersized bigs, they have to have some sort of skill. Like, Caleb Swanigan had skill, but the problem is he was undersized and he was super unathletic. So I hated that pick from the get-go. If you're undersized as a big man, you have to have athleticism and you have to have some sort of skill. And if you don't have one or the other, it's really hard to become an NBA caliber player.
Even Trendon Watford, like he has that little floater, right? Like that's what odd players don't have, because that's a nice touch shot. Well, like Jordan Bell doesn't have that. Like he's dunk or nothing.
Yep. Exactly. We love Trendon.
Yeah, but how do you feel on Trendon? I want to hear Steven, because I haven't heard you talk about Trendon. What do you think about Trendon, Steven?
I mean, I don't think he's ready to be like a full-time backup, but I love what I see. Like he's a very smart basketball player, and you can tell that on the court. And I talked about Banchero with his body. Like Watford has a body, like an NBA body already, and so like he can withstand punishment. And he's not afraid to back down and stuff. So I do think he's an eventual backup in the NBA that's going to be around for years. I don't know if it's next year that he's ready to be that full-time backup 4 or 5 for the Blazers, but I do love him. Like he's been like the bright spot for the Blazers, I think.
Yep. What were you gonna say here?
This is kind of out of place now, but I was just gonna say, sure would be nice to have a healthy Zach Collins on our team right now.
Yeah, it hurts, dude. It's like Norm and Rocco were balling out yesterday for the Clippers, and like Zach Collins is looking ripped and looking really good in San Antonio. I know it's just one game, but he was looking good in the G League. Like, oh man, I wish we kept him, man. Like, that would have made this tank season a lot easier if we could have just given him 35 minutes a game. It just sucks that he was so injury prone, because I think he'd still be on the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, Olshey really hitched it, Anthony and Zach. They have them both boom, and fortunately, Zach got hurt and just never could. Like, I love Zach Collins. I thought he'd be really good, but just the injuries, man, it killed him.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, maybe if he plays well this season, maybe then people will be okay with Chet Holmgren. I don't know. But as far as the chat poll goes, 71% said they wouldn't trade Dame even if it got us closer to a championship. 29% said they would. I feel like if you pulled your radio listeners, I feel like it might be the opposite of that. I feel like it might be like 70-30 yes. So it's always interesting to do polls like that, because like just the listener demographic is different, like with us here on YouTube compared to maybe some of your radio listeners.
Regular callers that just, they want to get rid of Dame. They wanted to do it last board and all that kind of stuff. So we got a couple crazy people like that, but you got to, it's all in good nature. Like, it's all about winning the championship. Like, that's what Blazer fans want, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've learned working at the station, it's like, Portland is a small market team, but, like, we love the Blazers. And, like, ride and die our fans. And so it's like, well, all we want is a championship. And so we get so frustrated when, like, these things happen where we feel like we can get better trades and stuff like that, because it hurts our feelings, The Blazers do this every year to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I have a question for you, Steven. If there's a Rip City 3-on-3 tournament this year, fingers crossed, are you going to play for 620?
I did. The only good player on the team, I tell you that. I haven't played in a long time, man. I had a couple of those tweets where I talked about I got kicked out of games and stuff. Frustrated, too fiery. refs were basically telling me like they're not gonna call fouls for me. So I was like, it's not even worth it. So I haven't played for a while, but I might come back out of retirement for that. That might be fun.
I know you can relate to that, Eric.
Yeah, I've been told that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, wasn't there a story about you like almost getting into a fight with Michael Holton in a rec league, Eric?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, dude, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch you guys battle. And what type of pick and roll defense are you gonna play on our pick and rolls, Steven? You gonna drop? You gonna show?
Oh, dude, I'm making you guys make jumpers all day. I don't play hard defense anymore. I'm a zone defense type of guy. I'm gonna let you shoot over the top and hope you miss. That's my defensive strategy nowadays.
Honestly, like I'm the type of guy. Indoors, I can shoot. Outdoors, I can't make I don't know what it is. It's like a mental thing for me. I cannot make a shot outdoors. So that's probably a pretty good strategy. I shouldn't be telling you this in case we do end up playing each other, but that's not a bad strategy against me playing outdoors. But yeah, that's a fun event, man. I'm hoping it comes back this year.
Outdoors is the rims, man. It's always those rims that are double rim, and those you got to shoot it perfectly every time.
Well, they got like for Rip City 3-on-3, they got like cardboard backboards, so you have to like really throw the ball off the backboard to get it to bounce normally. Like it's just the ball just dies on the backboard, and then we were playing on the courts like that road. I don't know what road it is. It's like in front of the parking garages by the Memorial Coliseum, and it's like sloped. And if you're facing to the west, it's like there's no backdrop. It's just sky. You can see like the hills in the background. It's kind of cool, but the depth perception sucks. So I'm just broke, man.
Yeah, dude. That depth perception is weird, man. I remember when I was at Concordia, we had like some curtains fall down just for one of our practices, and I was just bricking every single time over on the one side of the court because it was just like it just threw me off. So weird.
Yeah, people don't realize that until like I shot on the Moda Center court once, and people don't realize how much that messes with you as a shooter, just what's behind the hoop and how far away is it. So man,
during the COVID year, all the players shot better in the empty arenas with no sound and no nothing. Like the percentages were way higher than they are this year.
Yeah, it's easier to tell like how far away it is, because that's the one thing when I played in the Moda Center. It's like the hoop seemed like it was right in front of me, and I would be standing at the 3-point line, and it was hard. I had to like see where I was on the court, and then like, okay, I need to shoot it this hard because of where I am. It wasn't like just, aiming at the hoop, which, I'll obviously get used to it after you play on that for a while, but having never done it, it was trippy, man. I was almost airballing free throws. It was that bad. So anyway, anything else you want to end off with, Steven?
No, man, thanks for letting me come on, you guys. I really respect you guys' work. You guys hustle. You guys know what you're talking about. And just thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, Steven. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks. This was a really entertaining conversation, so we'll have to do this again. Hopefully it's under a little better circumstances than after this trade, man. But, so what's your, Twitter handle? Shout out whatever you want to shout out, man.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm at Steven_VON, because my last name has a sneaky A in it, so I spell it easy for everybody.
Yeah.
At StevenVON, _VON, then you can catch me and Chad Blazer Game Day. I'm his producer. The fifth quarter, I'm his producer as well. But I get on there a lot and give my 2 cents. So it's an entertaining show. I know you guys are on post game, so after you guys listen to you can hop on the fifth quarter, call in, and get your views there too, man.
Yeah, I mean, people listen back to us the morning after. A lot of people do anyways. So, that's what's nice about doing YouTube. Everything's just uploaded there for people to watch. So, anyway, man, this was a really fun conversation. Appreciate you hopping on. Appreciate some of the banter there. And for everybody else, we'll be live again Wednesday instead of Thursday, as Thursday we'll have the trade deadline stream the morning of. We'll be going live around, 8 a.m. and streaming until the trade deadline hits, so definitely go check that out. And we'll have a trade deadline preview stream on Wednesday. Obviously, if a trade goes down, we'll come live with an emergency stream, and, so just be prepared for that. With that being said, anything else that I got to plug, Eric?
Post game tomorrow, too.
Post game tomorrow. Yeah, that'll be fun. We get to talk about another law. Actually, we're playing the Magic. We might win.
Yeah, we're playing the Magic.
Eric, you're gonna have to carry that post game show because my rec league is back tomorrow for the first time in a month. So I might not watch most of that game, to be honest with you. I got a ball, man. but I know that you can carry. I might catch the second half. I got to watch my guy Sugg. So anyway, hopefully you have a good rest of your Monday. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.